What's up? It's Marco back in, and today I'll be talking about the US U20 camp, and we've got a good amount to talk about. I've actually got a new setup. You probably noticed that, but it's going to be good to get into this new team. We have a lot of players missing. Obviously, a lot of the players were named to the senior team. In addition to that, we have players like Daniel Edelman, Brian Gutierrez, and Chris Brady, who were not released for call-ups, or at least that's the theory, because they're just core players for this team. And as well as that, we have players like Luka Kolashu and Ben Kermesky, who might have not been released or might have declined a call up. Those two are pretty big dual national battles, so I have to be concerned about that. Then obviously we have Gabriel Slonina, Paxton Aronson, Jalen Neal, Cade Cowell, and Jonathan Gomez, who are with the senior team at the moment. I if them being with the senior team might say that we rate them a little bit ahead of the other U20 guys, but outside of Slonina, I really don't think that's the case, at least with their actual play. So I'm just as excited about the other guys in the U20 team. So running through the team, starting off in goal, we have Emmanuel Ochoa and Antonio Carrera. There's not too much to say about both of them. Neither of them are really first team players yet. And with goalkeepers, as they develop a lot later, there's not as much to talk about. It's not like a Gabriel Sonino or Chris Brady, where both of them are just insane early development players. And honestly, probably both really good prospects, especially Chris Brady. I'm excited to see him play with Chicago this season. I'm hoping he ends up being their starter. But it's there's not as much to say about the goalkeepers. Then getting into the center backs, and we've got good prospects here: Brandon Craig, Josh Winder, Marcus Furcranis, and Thomas Williams. If I'm Brandon Craig, like I'm honestly feeling a little bit hard done by not being with the senior team. Maybe it's my Philadelphia Union bias, as you can see, but I felt like he's been playing better than Jalen Neal with the U20 team, and neither of them have really been with their first teams. If anything, Craig has a little bit more time with minuscule minutes with the Union. I think it was 4 total, but still, I think he's a very good player. We know how good his on-ball ability is, and just that makes him special by itself. He could honestly be playing a midfielder in the future. And honestly, with the lack of number sixes that we have in this team, he might be playing in the midfield at this camp. But that aside, just really solid center back prospect who I think is probably the top prospect in this U20 group for the center backs. Then Josh Winder is another really exciting player. Similar to Emmanuel Ochoa, he's 2005, which means he's going to be eligible for the next U20 cycle, but he could very easily be a starter in this group. Winder is just like such a solid center back, like beyond his years. Like he's been playing with Louisville City, first team in the USL. He's got a lot of pro minutes, definitely the most pro minutes out of any of the center backs in this group. And like he's just really solid. He doesn't have any flaws as a player, and especially for a young center back, like the consistency that he shows is amazing, and he deserves to be with this group. I'm excited to see him play because he could very easily be starting alongside Brandon Craig at that U20 World Cup, and definitely in the next cycle he'll be a rock for us, and that unless he's already with the senior team. And I believe he's got a move coming up. I thought that because he wasn't with the senior team, there was a chance that he'd be getting a move like this year. But there are some rumors floating around. But I think that, honestly, staying another year wouldn't be the end of the world. He's already ahead of Jonathan Gomez's pace. Next, we got Marcus Furcranis. I think he's been pretty solid for the U20 team. He hasn't been making any mistakes, but he doesn't seem to have the potential that Jalen Neal or Brandon Craig have. It seems that both the LA Galaxy as well as the US system rate Jalen Neal ahead of him. And I've been more impressed by Brandon Craig this cycle, but he's had a couple of really good performances. One that stands out is the opening game of the CONCACAF U20 tournament. Like it wasn't against that high level of opposition, but I thought he had like a 10 out of 10 performance, and I don't say that lightly. So I think there's a lot of potential there, but I think for him more than anything else, he needs to get out of LA Galaxy because I think Jalen Neal needs to get out because I don't think he's going to get many opportunities. And the Galaxy seem to rate Neal higher than Furcranis, and I like Furcranis needs to get somewhere where he can play consistently. Like he's got a 2005, like a player who's 2 years younger than him with a lot more game time. And I think that if he wants to develop and stay with this group of players, he needs to just actually play, which seems obvious, but something that needs to be said. And then a bit of a newcomer to this group, Thomas Williams out of Orlando. Not too much to say. He's not somebody who's had too much first team experience, but left footed center back, good in build up. I think he looked really good with the U19s earlier. So good to see him in this group, and I think he can positively affect the play. Be fun to see him play alongside. I'd like to see like Winder and Williams play alongside each other. Try Craig in the midfield. That could be a fun experiment. But it's going to be good to look at all these guys playing. Next, moving on to fullback, and we don't have as much to talk about, not too many new players, but we do have two Orlando City right backs, a lot of position overlap, multiple Chicago goalkeepers, a lot of Philadelphia midfielders, and we've got two Orlando right backs, and Alex Freeman and Michael Holiday. Uh, I think that Freeman, he's new to this group and he's a younger player than Holiday, so I'm not sure if he's as good as Holiday is yet, but I think Freeman has a ton of potential. Really good athlete. He showed a lot of good attacking prowess with the U19s earlier, and he's definitely someone to keep your eye on. And then Holiday, I think he had like a bit of a rougher showing with the U20s in the past, but he's somebody who has looked pretty good in some MLS minutes. I remember watching a game where he was really harassing my Union team. Like I think that he is a good player, a good prospect, but not sure if he should be starting with this group. Maybe you'd want to experiment with the left backs a little bit more, bring in another left back. But good to see him here. And then we've got Mauricio Cuevas. He's been captaining this team a lot, and I don't think we're actually playing any games, but or at least not maybe some behind closed doors, but not playing any like games that I'll be able to talk about. Cuevas will likely be captaining them. Him and Daniel Edelman have been the captains, and as I mentioned before, Edelman's not here as he wasn't released. He's likely training with the New York Red Bull first team, which is a win. Like this is just a random camp, like done to keep people in shape. If he's staying in shape with his first team, that is completely fine. And Cuevas, it's a little bit concerning that he was released for this. A lot of the Euro guys, like if they are at this camp, like it's not a great sign for their first team prospects for the rest of the season, especially guys coming off the break. Like we saw Justin Che, who's now training with the Schalke first team. So Mauricio Cuevas being here, it's not the greatest thing, but hey, it's good to have another good player in here. He's looked pretty good for the team, and hopefully he can take some good momentum back into Belgium. And lastly, we've got our one left back in this group, Caleb Wiley. And Wiley's just a crucial player for this group because, like, left footed players, like left backs in particular, are hard to come by. Honestly, on him, similar to Brandon Craig, I'm feeling a bit hard done by. I thought that he did outplay Jonathan Gomez at the Revelations Cup, and I think Wiley's got a ton of potential. We've seen just his technical ability really take a step forward. He's got that attacking ability. He even plays some wing for Atlanta. A really great physically. I think that he's probably on a better track than George Bello was, who is already a senior national team player. So I'm really excited about watching Caleb Wiley, and he's probably one of the top prospects in this group. Now getting into the midfield, and there's a bit more of an issue with this team in the midfield because, as I mentioned before, Daniel Edelman is not with the squad. In addition, Rokas Puskas was not released, which again is a good thing if they're not here, in my opinion. But with both those players being gone, there's a pretty big hole at the sixth position in the squad. Honestly, Puskas is probably not a six naturally anyway. He was just filling in there. So that makes it so that I'm not really sure who's going to be playing there. Two players in this team who could are Daniel Leyva and Jack McGlynn. McGlynn has been playing a bit more advanced with the Philadelphia Union as an eight, and I think that's a position where he's probably better at, but just a really good passer of the ball, good technically. I think he's got a good speed of play about him, and I think he could really help the squad, but he doesn't offer much defensively. Daniel Leyva is a bit more of the same. He actually had a really good season for Seattle. A lot of the hype was going to Obed Vargas, but in that position, Leyva was really the better player this last year, though he's 2 years older than Vargas. But and Vargas I think is injured, which is why he isn't here. But with Leyva and McGlynn, both two technical players who are very good, who could help in build up, but don't offer too much defensively. And for a team that really doesn't have much defensively to begin with, I think that I'd probably want a different player in there. I mentioned Brandon Craig before, who is an option to play the six. Alejandro Alvarado is probably the only other option. He's been a very good box to box midfielder for this team. I think, especially in the final third, he's looked really good and just one of our really technical midfielders. But he probably has the most defensively in the squad. So if they do play a game, I'd expect Alvarado to be playing at the six. But it's just a little bit of a hole in the squad that you have to take note of. That being said, I'm pretty excited about all the players. Big Jack McGlynn fan, obviously, and Alejandro Alvarado's looked really good for this team. I think he was the most impressive player. at the U20 CONCACAF championship. He's got a couple of minutes in Portugal, not enough for him to not be released for this one. But I think he looks like a really solid prospect. Leyva as well. It's good to see him back with the U20 team. He'd been out of it for a little bit, but I think they are some good prospects there. And moving further forward in the midfield, Diego Luna, another player who probably could have been with the senior team. He hasn't had the best start to the MLS, but he was looking really good in the USL, and man, just a really creative player. And I think we need those creative playmakers in this team. And like a lot of times I talk about players like especially with just Camp Cupcake earlier. It's like, okay, like Alejandro Zendejas, he's got a couple of promising things about him. Like Senora, he looks all right, but like they don't really do anything to upgrade on like a Yunus Musa or Weston McKinney or Brendan Aronson. But I feel like Diego Luna's got like such a creativity about him, like the two-footedness, just how he plays the game. Like I think he would add something to the senior team. The rest of the game does need to catch up. I'd like to see him add a bit more like defensive ability, but his athleticism is progressing a lot more than I thought it would initially. But I think Luna looks like a really talented prospect. I'm glad to see him here. Probably would have preferred him with the senior team. Then we've got a couple of young players. Wait, I want to say the right one. Owen Wolf. We're going to get to the other Wolf later. And then Nico Tesseras. Two good midfielders. Tesseras, he's another one of our '05 players. He'll be eligible for the next U20 cycle. And both are two technical players who show a lot of good creativity. Tesseras, he was like keeping up with the team at the U20 tournament. Like a lot of times when you put in like a younger player, they can be a bit of a liability. But no, he was really keeping up, like still good enough in the build-up. He looks like a really promising guy from San Jose. I don't think there's too much to like really distinguish himself from like an Alvarado, a Luna, or a Wolf yet, but he deserves to be here. He is good enough to play with this group. And Owen Wolf, like man, he's looked very good with the U19s. He's no four player. Showed a lot of good creativity. I'm expecting him to get a good bit of time in Austin this year. I mean, his dad's the coach, so that helps a bit. But I think he deserves to be there. He's another good one of our technical midfielders. Again, he doesn't have too much to distinguish himself from like a Caden Clark, Paxton Aronson, Jack McGlynn. It's just a bit of a logjam because we've got a lot of really good players here. But that shouldn't take away from Owen Wolf being a good prospect. And the last player in this group is somebody who I was just really not expecting to see, Nick Periano out of Duke. So I've actually watched like a good bit of Duke this year. They've got a couple of really talented prospects. Peter Stroud's a notable one who just signed a homegrown deal with New York Red Bull. He's a 2002, so he can't be there, along with a couple other players who I like on that team. But honestly, like if you told me there was going to be a midfielder from Duke in this group, I probably would have expected Keenan Hott. I think he offers a lot more defensively than Piriano and would probably do well with this group. I think he's a really talented prospect, but Piriano's he's a pretty good player. He comes from the Philadelphia Union Academy, so I like him. And I think that he does have the technical ability needed to keep up with this group. I see a lot of good one-touch passes with him, and I think he's been playing as a bit of a 10, and he offers a good bit of energy pressing. He's listed as a midfielder. I wouldn't be surprised if he was playing with a wing in this group. Like, I don't want to take anything away from him. He's a pretty good player. Like, I could see him ending up with the Union in a couple of years. But I was really surprised to see him here. Like I mentioned before, if you told me there was going to be a Duke midfielder at this camp, I would have expected it to be Keenan Hott, but I'm willing to give him a try. I don't think we'll be able to see any of these games, but hey, I mean, Duke was a pretty good team. Maybe he'll be a really good player for this group. And lastly, we've got the attack, and this is a bit of a overlap with the midfield. A lot of the players in the attack could probably play in the midfield, and I'm going to call it like a general attack because I'm not exactly sure how everybody will line up. Because you've got Quinn Sullivan and Caden Clark, both could easily play in the midfield. Caden Clark's been a false nine for this team before. Quinn Sullivan could probably do a job at the nine, and then the rest of the team, you could really mix and match. I'm going to guess that Caden Clark, Quinn Sullivan, and another guy, get his name right, Korede Asundina, will be playing as the wing. And up top is likely going to be Jackson Hopkins, Tyler Wolf, and Rold Mitchell. So starting things off with Caden Clark, he was probably the top U20 prospect going into the 2021 Revelations Cup, but since then he had was it an appendectomy or like he got his appendix out, or it might have been his tonsils, one or the other. And he really didn't recover for New York Red Bulls at that season, and he hasn't been playing that much. And I know that he's owned by RB Leipzig now. He's still in the Red Bull system, but they allowed him to be released for this. And I'm hoping that Clark can have a really good season this year, just get back on track because really not the greatest 2022 for him, but he's got a ton of talent, like a really good technical player. He showed a lot of good qualities in the box. Like we're having him as a wing for a reason. We know we can have some good goal contributions, but he does need to get back on track. Like it seems that Paxton Aronson overtook him in the U.S. System's minds, and I don't think he could have any complaints about that because Paxton has looked really good with the U20 team, despite not playing that much with the Union either. Not many first team minutes there. Both are in Germany now. Actually, they're following a similar path, but I think that Paxton did pass him up a bit, but Clark, he's got a lot of talent. Hopefully, he can really show it this time. Then we got Quinn Sullivan, and I actually really like seeing Quinn Sullivan with the U20 team because my Philadelphia Union, we don't play with wingers in our system at all, and I think a wing is probably going to be Quinn Sullivan's best position. He's got a ton of really good work rate, and he's really good like in the box. His finishing is really strong. And while you look at these players, and I think there's something that I call like a technical baseline. Like you have to be so good technically, your speed of play, your first touch, your awareness, like all that needs to be so good to be like a player good enough to play with the national team. And like Quinn Sullivan, he definitely has that, but I don't think his technical ability is as good as guys like Jack McGlynn, Caden Clark, or Paxton Aronson. So I'd like to have him as a wing because his goal scoring is really good. His buildup is a little bit worse than the rest of those guys. So it's fun to see him like with this group. I'm hoping that he can play like on the left, cut in onto his right foot. I think that'd be a really dangerous way for him to play. And I'm really excited about Quinn Sullivan. I think he's a really top prospect. Then Asundina, he's a guy who haven't seen too much of. He signed with Orange County, the same club that Kobe Henry was at before he moved to Europe. And I guess Kobe Henry not being released is probably a good thing. I don't know. I haven't been keeping up with him as much since he moved on. But Asundina, he's a really good athlete, just a ton of pace with him. He showed a lot of good skill with the U19 team. A lot of teams players are moving up from that U19 squad, and I think he could be a pretty big help for this group. This group of players is kind of atypical for American players because it's a really good technical group, but the physicality like isn't there as much. Cade Cowell can really help with that. He's with the senior team right now, and I think Osavina could really help out the squad. He also has some good goal contributions. He can play striker as well. Like the end product is there, and he's a good prospect to have with this group. And I'm curious to see how he does. Again, probably not going to be able to see too much of it, but I'm excited to see if he can be with this team in the future, and he's going to make some good progress in the USL this year, in my opinion. And then we got our strikers, and striker's been a bit of a weaker position for this group. Okay, well, I want to say with a caveat, it's a bit of a weaker position for this group because Ricardo Pepi is too good, and he's just with the senior team. So like, keep in mind when I'm saying like the U20 is weak at striker. It's like, well, yeah, because they're too good at striker, which but still, it is a bit of an issue for this squad. At striker right now, in my opinion, it's going to be Jackson Hopkins, Tyler Wolf, and Rold Mitchell. I'll start off with Mitchell. He's another player coming out of college with Wake Forest, and I'd actually been calling for him to be in this team for a while. I'm not sure if I did by name, but when I was mentioning like there are a couple of strikers in college who I think I would give a shot to, like Mitchell was one of the guys I was talking about, and I'm glad to see him here. He's somebody who can finish, good enough hold up play. He should be signing with the New York Red Bulls on a homegrown deal somewhat soon. Don't know if it's going to be this year in particular. They already brought in Peter Stroud, but he's going to be playing with the Red Bulls pretty soon, like either this year or next year. And I think he's a good player to have with this group, and I'm excited to see him there. Then we have Tyler Wolf, the older brother of Owen Wolf, I believe. God, I'm getting all my Wolves mixed up. There's a Josh in there somewhere, I'm pretty sure too. And Tyler, he was with the U20 group in the U20 CONCACAF Championship. I thought that, well, I kept saying that striker was a weakness. I'm not sure if he's really up to the level of the rest of the players. He had a move to Germany. I think it was Germany, might have been Belgium, that really didn't work out. He's already back to Atlanta. And I think he could have shown some good strides. Like he's obviously a young player. Improvement could have come for him. but he needs a bit more like first team minutes before he's really involved with the squad and really making an impact. But maybe he could do pretty well. Like obviously everybody's a young player, everybody here has potential, but I think he has some growing to do before he really keeps up with the rest of the team. And then we've got Jackson Hopkins, who's been with this U20 group for a while. He's a player who I think is a bit like Jesus Ferreira, where he's probably not a true striker, and because that he doesn't get to show his stuff as much as he really could. But he's had a couple of decent moments with his U20 group. Again, like I still feel like that striker's a weakness for this group, and I'm not sure if he's going to be the solution, but Wayne Rooney is really high on him, and that has to mean something. And I think he's a player who could have a really good season in the MLS this year and keep developing and keep growing as a player. But I think that striker is still a bit of a weak link for this group, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Caden Clark playing a false nine or Quinn Sullivan being put as a striker, which I feel like could work out. But it's going to be interesting to see how this team plays. So that's it for this team. Running through all these players, I think the top prospects here, definitely at center back, Brandon Craig and Josh Winder are two players I'm really excited about. It's going to be fun to get a look at Freeman. If we get a look at these games, it's probably all going to be behind closed doors. And Caleb Wiley is obviously somebody who's really exciting. Then Jack McGlynn is somebody who probably should have been with the senior team. Like I look at a lot of those players in that squad, like Calvin Acosta was there. Like give Kellen Acosta some more time off after the World Cup. Get McGlynn in that squad because he looked very good with the Union, who was one of the top teams in the MLS last season. And in addition to that, like I don't know, I just think he could have offered a bit more than some of the midfielders who were included in that senior team. Then Alvarado looks like a really good prospect. He's somebody I'm pretty high on. Diego Luna is obviously going to be a really great player. Nico Ceres, probably more for his potential at being an 05 who's playing really well with this group, like keeping up with an extremely technical midfield. But man, looks like a really good prospect. Then obviously Caden Clark and Quinn Sullivan, a couple of really good prospects in this group. Again, probably not going to be able to watch them play. We've got the U20 World Cup coming up really soon, and it's going to be fun to watch a lot of these guys, and we'll get to add a Daniel Edelman back into this group, who I've been really impressed by lately. Chris Brady or Gabriel Slonina, it's going to be a choice. Like that's a tough choice that they're going to have to make again. It's insane that they both came up through Chicago. Getting Gutierrez back with the squad, maybe some more of those dual national players. Paxton Harrison, Jonathan Gomez, Cade Cal back with this group, and it's going to be really fun to watch them. And yeah, that's all I've talked about. Let me know how you like this setup, and yeah, see ya.